kind of the excellence modeling, especially when it comes to your own patient care and what people see you do, as well as the coaching and mentoring aspects of getting folks to where we want them to be and they want to be. This is a very brief conversation because they have covered that stuff so well, but one of the big things for us to bear in mind is the importance of intervening and making sure that we elevate the entire team, even if some parts of the team may not want to be elevated. So EMS is a team sport. You hear Dr. Dan, you hear Dr. Weir say it all the time, that there's absolutely no way that any one individual is able to respond to all 120,000 calls that we have every year. We have to ensure that that goal of modeling excellence gets pushed to all of the providers that we interact with. And it's important for us to think about, how often do we miss a call? How often does a call go on in your 24-hour shift when you're at work that you aren't there? Most of them. Probably 99% of the calls that this agency runs, you're not on. And that's okay. But you also need to keep that in mind, that if you are on an incident or you see something happen and it does not meet the standard, or it is not great, or it's just simply an opportunity for us to make an improvement, we need to intervene. We need to take advantage of that opportunity, because it's not what you do or what you say, it's what you tolerate other folks doing and saying. So if you realize, hey, I've tried to get you to understand doing this, I've tried to tell you doing this, and we still can't consistently get it done, let's make sure that we have a conversation that we get you headed in the right direction. And this is hard, but it requires that we be constantly diligent. And we brought up the conversation related to selective spinal motion restriction in the elderly patient population. And I'll be honest, I've been tolerating seeing reports come through with the 70-year-old, the 67-year-old, the 66-year-old who fell, who has an injury, but they don't have a cervical collar on, it's not documented, it's not addressed in their documentation, and I've been tolerating it. And I went to do QI last night and went, well, I've got like 6 or 7 of these reports that I have allowed the providers that I work with to normalize that deviation. Because even though I see this one report that pops up, I'm like, I'm sure they're doing it right most of the time, and I move past. We have to hold ourselves accountable to that standard to make sure that they understand, hey, there's a reason I'm asking you to do this. There's a reason that we have this standard that's set. And if we don't have that conversation with them, we're basically saying, hey, it's okay for you to not do it right. It's not a one-size-fits-all solution either. You're not going to have the same conversations. You're not going to interact with folks in the same way every single time. The way that I address Nate Giddings failing to rise to the occasion, or maybe trying to do something that wasn't exactly on point, is not going to be the same way that I address David. You need to be good at reading those individuals that you're talking to, taking the appropriate steps to make sure that you're actually engaging an audience that's ready to have that message sent. I don't think that Dr. Weir was in here when we were having the conversation earlier, but he mentioned it yesterday, and it was when he said it, I saw myself in the exact same situation and recognized I probably should have done that differently. There are some times where Dr. Weir's trying to follow up with a crew about a call, and he plays the First Due app chase, where, all right, well, they're here, I'm gonna see if I can go catch them at Fair Oaks, and then they're gone by the time they get there, and they go to another station and try to catch them there, and then you try to go here and catch them there. Try not to inconvenience them, but after 5 or 6 hours of trying to find somebody around the county, you're white knuckling your steering wheel, and you're like, I just need to do this. How good of a headspace are you gonna be in to engage in that discussion, engage in that debrief? It's probably time to say, you know what, all right, cool. Especially when the entire time you've been seething, like I need to deal with this, and I was already a little bit frustrated. It's time for you to reset your own perspective. We often think of conflict resolution and the engagement in difficult conversations from the perspectives that Thomas Kilman takes, where we're basically competing for resources. And we need to be sure that we come at this from the perspective that we're not competing with each other. We are all wearing the same patch. We are all wearing the same uniform. We have the same objectives. We're on the same team. But when I say, Mike, we need to talk about how that call went, that immediately injects that adversarial relationship. We need to ensure that we break those down with those we statements, not the you or I. Make sure that everybody knows, like, hey, let's talk about how that call went. How can we make sure that this doesn't go that way again in the future? Buy in, make sure that they know, hey, I'm trying to make this better so that we all improve, that the entire agency improves, that we don't have something like this happen again, because we're not competing for resources, we're not fighting against each other. Anybody who's gone through any of the professional development courses in the last couple of years, you have seen this model. Basically, it's a extension from the Office of Alternative Dispute Resolution through county HR of basically how do you engage with these difficult conversations? How do you enter into conflict and then resolve conflict? And while I think that there's not 100% applicability with this, it gives us a good thing to kind of discuss the important pieces. So the first thing is obviously the delineation of preparing and planning before you engage in these talks. A lot of times like, hey, somebody did something that's not great. And so this conversation is going to be hard to get through. We need to already have a plan in place. One of the big pieces for that is knowing your own self from a bias perspective, as well as just knowing your own personality and the things about you. So one of the examples that I use is I know I am a 6'5" gigantic white dude. If I come storming into a station and say, hey, we need to talk about what you just screwed up, I'm probably not going to be received from a perspective that's non-adversarial ever. It's important to make sure that I reflect upon that. It's important for me to know where I come from and my biases of expecting a certain level of performance, the way that I grew up, the way that I was taught to communicate. I have to know me so that I can tailor that to the conversation and not approach it from an inappropriate perspective. We talked about checking mindset specifically. Are you in the okay headspace to do this? I can't tell you how often I have drafted an email to delete it. Because if you do something while you are spun up, you're gonna regret it. Everybody in here probably knows Mark Menton. He's one of my mentors, and he is absolutely phenomenal at a couple of things. One of them is imparting the fact that you could be 100% right, but if you're angry and you yell, you lost that argument no matter what. You're not going to win that person over. You're not going to change their perspective. So check yourself before you step into that situation. And then know what is the goal that I'm trying to accomplish here. Am I thinking that we're going to head in the direction of involving my EMS supervisor and starting a performance improvement plan? Or am I trying to just correct somebody's behavior? Am I trying to win over their hearts and minds to get them bought in on the fact of why this matters? Because we've got some folks that you legitimately need to say, like, hey, I understand your perspective, but the organization, the medical directors, we are going to do this differently in the future. Video laryngoscopy was a great example of that. When we did the MSEP session talking about the King vision, I had a paramedic tell me, son, I have been intubating people since before you were alive. How dare you tell me that I have to use this tool? I had to take a step back. That person was not ready to have a conversation or to learn. And eventually we came to the decision of, okay, I understand your perspective. However, here are the reasons why you're going to need to do this. And if you have a problem with that, then we need to escalate this further up the chain of command. It's rare, but sometimes those instances happen. The other big thing to plan is know when the correct setting is available and how do we do this. Is this simply a conversation at the hospital afterwards? Is it a catch them at the pharmacy? Is it go to their station and have a discussion? Make sure that you're reflecting also on who the audience is that's around. If you have an issue with an individual's behavior, it may not be appropriate to have a conversation of like, hey, why were you an asshole in front of their crew? But there's also times where it is important to have conversations with the entire crew present so that we all learn and grow together. So tailor that to the needs of the individual. Follow up, we do it on every single promotional test, but making sure that we know what a plan is to actually not only just say, hey, we're going to deal with this and then never actually follow through. Have tangible objectives, have those SMART goals, and have a plan for when you're going to circle back through that. And it's a lot easier when it's your station, your zone, your shift, than it is when you're on callback or the people that you're interacting with are on callback. I do not enjoy doing CQI with folks that don't work for me, because that means that I have no idea what their normal is, which we're trying to erase and fix some of that here in this collective group where we all get on the same page. But also, I don't have as much of an ability to follow through, because I'm not going to see them again next shift. I'm not going to see them again multiple times over the coming weeks. So you need to engage and communicate with that person's normal supervisor, their normal EMS specialist. Have that conversation of, hey, here's what happened. Here's what we had a conversation of, and here's where I think that we're going with this. Now I'm passing it off, versus the quintessential, and you get these emails often, hey, this came up on a call, I didn't address it with the crew, I'm giving it to you to deal with, which is never the right thing. I wasn't on the call. It's not something that I was available for. It's difficult to manage that situation. So follow up and follow through is extremely important. It is extremely easy to avoid the issue, especially when you know, hey, this is gonna be a conversation with somebody who has walls up, who is unwilling to engage in this conversation, who has already made it clear that I don't want to be told that I did the wrong thing, and I'm unwilling to listen to you when we have that conversation. It's easy to say, like, all right, well, I'm gonna deal with it a little bit later today. I'll give them some time to decompress. And then a little bit later on, well, they're in the middle of something, so I won't deal with it quite yet. And then suddenly it's a couple of shifts later, and now you're no longer engaging with that person at all. And one of the most challenging things right now going on within our organization is the way that we're doing discipline related to the collective bargaining agreement. So if you are in the process of finding out information about an investigation, what do you have to do as a supervisor? What are those forms? You got to go through the 290 series potentially. That injects some delays into that process, which is challenging because now you're allowing a lot of time to elapse. And while it's not a direct example, I always kind of go back to, it's kind of like if your dog were to shit on the floor and then like a week later you punish them for it, that dog has no idea what they're being punished for. There needs to be some close context of, hey, this behavior happened, now we need to address it. And there are obviously some legal pieces that we need to make sure that we're navigating appropriately, but it's something to bear in mind that if you allow an issue to sit, it's either going to continue to happen or it's never going to get addressed. Don't attack the individual. Deal with the behavior or what happened that we're not happy with. Certainly don't publicly call them out. We tend to go to a place of sarcasm and dark humor as emergency services workers, and this is obviously not the place for that. And if at any point you realize, I'm getting heated about this, it's okay to say, hey, let's take a break. Make sure that your own temper is under control and you're in a position that you're actually able to have this conversation. So again, this was brief, but this should be a reiteration of things that you guys already know as officers within the organization. Do you guys have any ways that you approach these difficult conversations? Any tips or tricks that you guys have? Does everybody, with the exception of a couple of folks, currently supervise people? And I'm sure that you've had to be in a position to have these conversations.
I think the challenging part is you talk about the difference between giving feedback and debriefing an EMS call versus like a discipline or like a personnel issue. Because most things we're debriefing EMS, they should be near the time of the event, giving them time to obviously cool down. And we're doing just culture. There shouldn't be any discipline that's related to care. So we shouldn't have to do a 290, and we should be able to directly have that conversation. Now, as you're talking, if something comes up that could turn into an investigation, like, then I realized the meds were missing, or I realized my ALS bag was missing. At that point, due to collective bargaining, you might have to go, okay, cool, thanks for letting me know. We got to pause there on that part of it because we got to follow the correct procedures, right? You can still have the conversation about patient care, but make sure not to keep talking about the part that might result in discipline.
And a lot of that, and I think that the doc will back up this thought process, when you start addressing like, hey, I've got a patient care concern, let's talk about it. And when the provider you're talking to is very receptive and they're like, we need to address this, we need to talk about this, and they're willing to be introspective in the ways that Chris and Steve talked about, like that sets a completely different tone than when you're like, hey, I have a question about your patient care, and they're like, yeah, no, I just don't care. Or yeah, no, I did that intentionally. Like, no, I did not treat this seizure, or no, I did not do that thing. Or yeah, I know that's not in our protocol and I just did it anyway. Like, there's a difference between an educational component that needs to be lacking, or there's a behavioral component where somebody intentionally did something wrong or negligent.
Yeah. I think for me, normally how these things start out is whether you're an EMS supervisor and you're getting an inquiry that you have to investigate. Typically you get a phone call like, yeah, these guys and gals from so-and-so station like did this and it's the worst thing ever, and like, so automatically you're already biased, like, okay. So you're already driving there like kind of thinking they're guilty and all that. Well, then what you find is there's like 10 other contributing factors. It's not as bad as you were told. So I think maybe the best practice is do a little homework beforehand and research the call and go into things with an open mind. Because typically, when you talk to people, it's never as bad as what was reported to you as part of your initial investigation.
Absolutely. My favorite complaint that I ever received, I sat on the phone for like an hour and a half with this woman, just berating how terrible my paramedics were. It was a different organization. It was a completely, and this was not around here, this was a different county. And at the end of it, I was like, okay, I got a lot of information, and now I'm going to send it over to that agency.
That feels so good. It's like peeing after you've been on the phone for 5 hours.
There's a guy in the University of Virginia area who sits on the ACLS board and all kinds of other stuff for AHA, and his name's Costas Alibertis. He's a little bit of a legend down there, and he was the chief of that organization. When I sent him the email, he goes, "Doesn't it feel good to shovel shit in your neighbor's backyard?" Yeah, sometimes.
You know, I've never, I always think the perception of like, no one started their day out going, I want to do a bad job today.
Yes.
You know, usually there's always some kind of like emotional factor, or some human factor, or just, you know, stress, something else is, you know, no one goes, I'm going to just be a real piece of crap today.
Yeah. And we have to take that into consideration, like, hey, are you okay? What is going on? I don't think Chris mentioned it today, maybe he did, but there's also, this is a long career. People come here with the intention of staying around for a very long time, and there are changes, waxes and wanes to the level of performance, the level of attention that you can put into this place versus what's going on outside of here. And it's also okay sometimes to be like, hey, is it time to change your career trajectory a little bit, make some differences? And that's extremely hard to put onto somebody else, but that requires you knowing them well and figuring out, like, I wouldn't walk up to somebody and be like, hey, you just have gray hair, you want to go work at somewhere slower? But it is okay for us to recognize, like, this is a big organization with a lot of opportunities. He is standing, so I think it's a hip issue, but we have a lot of different places that folks can be a good contributor to our organization and also be able to take care of themselves and deal with whatever other things are going on in their life. But you'll never know that if the first time that you meet this person is when you're like, hey, are you normally an asshole?
For sure.
What else?
One of the,
Go, please, Paul.
I was going back to setting, right? Just animal behavior, you know, dog and stuff. The humans are animals. So I never like to have these tough conversations in a small office.
Yeah.
I usually, hey, can we go outside?
Yeah.
Like, it's that trapping of that person, the confinement. Now they're all on the defense. It's like, hey, let's go outside, picnic bench or front bench. Let's just have a conversation. Exactly. That's the opening. It's like, are you okay?
Mm-hmm.
What's going on? I noticed that this wasn't your greatest performance. You know, something else happened. Oh yeah, PS track, blah, 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 that third call.
Yeah.
Gotcha, man. I gotcha. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And yeah.
It also gives them the opportunity to set what their body language and their coping mechanisms are, and you can either match or allow them to do that based off of what's appropriate and what you envision. Like, if they need to move around, maybe it's okay. You guys, y'all are taking laps.
100% our body language too, right? Sitting on the bench or the picnic table, you know, not in an aggressive manner. So, you know, sit back, put your legs up, whatever. Probably make that comfortable, you know, for them, right? It's that initial, like Chief said, initial approach, you know, that initial investigation. Side before you actually lean over the desk and hammer for being an idiot or an asshole for some reasons.
Yeah.
I think that where your heart is in these things also shines through in some way. And the way I look at this always, and this is just, no other way to say it than like honest truth. Like, I want everyone to have the best tools. I want you to have everything you need to be successful in the hardest situations. And I come at these things from that place, right? People, when you're teaching intubation, one of the most dangerous people that you can be for yourself is somebody that's good at intubating that then doesn't learn all the skills for that 1% chance because they've always been a little bit better. And then you end up being able to force stuff and make it work most of the time. But then when you have that one time that you need all of the skills, you've never developed all of those things because you were always kind of above average, not you personally, but just in general. And so I look at wanting all of our people to have all of the skills for that one time. I want you to have the best tools. And if you approach it from that, and that's why it's worth having these conversations, and that's why I think that these are conversations that elevate everyone. I honestly believe in that we can elevate our whole group.
Absolutely.